Welcome, welcome, welcome. What's going on, Gainesville? We have a very, very, very special guest in the building today. It's your boy Jerk Jerkins right here on WMBT 90.1 FM The Beat. Right here on the Jerk Jerkins Show. Y'all know we try to keep the community abreast of all things. And I have a real treat for the city today, man. Mr. Tom Wells, who's a candidate for Congress right here, District 3 at Gainesville, right?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. I just want to say thanks for coming by, man.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to chat with my neighbors.
Hey, I really just want to express how grateful and eager I am just to know your ideas. You know what I mean? Because I can tell by looking at you, you know, and just looking at you, how dedicated you are. So I really I'm really curious. So I want to start off to introduce you to the community, to the city. If you can give the people just a little background on yourself, you know, where you grew up. I read a lot about you already, but
Well, I am Tom Wells and lived in Gainesville for about 18 years. I have 4 beautiful children. 3 of them have had good success in their academics, got advanced degrees in the healthcare field. The 4th one is still college age.
nice.
That means all of them have student loans, and student loans are not what they used to be.
Right, that's crazy.
A lot of people my age, I am not. Well, I am a millennial. I'm just a different millennial.
That's funny.
Yeah, when I was growing up, a minimum wage job, you pay for your rent
Right.
for 6 days of working.
Right.
And if you went on food stamps like Ted Yoho did,
Yeah.
you
Wow.
didn't have work requirements. Yeah,
I didn't
nobody
know
was
that.
hassling you.
I had no
And,
clue. I'm sure they don't
we got a
publicize that
different
much.
world, and another part of that is the college used to be basically pretty near free.
Right.
You could pay for it with that full-time minimum wage job, and
Right.
a lot of people did, and they
Mhm.
got good educations.
So-
They were not penalized for trying to improve themselves. My 3 older children have been 5, 10, 15 years in their professions
Wow.
with basically PhDs in physical therapy, pharmacy, and as a medical doctor, and they're still paying off their student loans.
That's crazy.
My student loan,
It's a racket.
3%.
It's a racket, man. It's a racket.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I mean, you end up going to school and incurring more debt than you know.
And the reason that it got toxified is simply people donating to Congress, and Congress changing the law to give banks precedence over American citizens. So
Wow.
we make the banks protected so people can die in the streets and the banks still get their money.
Wow.
Puerto Rico, they have a tremendous, tremendous debt, which came from changes in the tax laws,
Mm.
which the state government down there borrowed money, and when the tax laws changed, all the industry fled and the housing market collapsed, and the debts did not collapse. Because
No.
those capitalistic banks are actually welfare banks.
Right.
They don't have any risk. Our Congress has eliminated any risk for those guys.
Wow.
Now, I'm talking about this like I know something.
Right.
I have a PhD in physics. Now, how does that relate? Well,
Right.
it relates because when my babies were babies,
Right.
then Reagan was in office.
AIDS.
And I noticed he was doing stuff that they taught me in civics class you couldn't do.
Huh. Like.
And, well, like when somebody went on a wildcat strike, he struck them down.
Wow.
The air traffic controllers actually had a handwritten letter from Ronald Reagan, the candidate, that said he was going to support them and provide them with better equipment, newer equipment, and shorter work hours, because fatigue can be a dangerous thing when you got this 1980s kind of equipment and trying to
Right.
track the increasing volume of air traffic that we had. And the day he's inaugurated, he says, "Ah, kidding, just kidding."
Wow.
And they went on a wildcat strike, but Reagan was not just kidding. He had got the FBI all lined up. They had the addresses of every union leader, and they arrested them all in the homes that morning. And not another one ever worked in air traffic control again.
Yeah.
And the other unions
That
did
sound
not.
like the KGB or something.
Well, it's close enough.
Right.
We've been evolving that way, convergent evolution.
That's what it seems to me. Well, let me back up a little bit because you just said a lot, but I wanna kind of illustrate and ask you a little bit about your stance on public funding? Because I see that. I see you got a.
No.
I see you're a staunch opponent today. So I just really want to, if you could unpack that a little bit, talk about it a little bit.
Oh yeah. There are a lot of people talking about public funding, and there's been a few states which have actually publicly funded elections. The one that I have any numbers for is Connecticut. They've had public funding of elections since like 2003. And when you get public funding, they put some requirements on you not to take other money and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they fund it at a pretty low level, but still, even with a pretty, what I call a minor kind of approach to public funding, they get almost 2/3, 3/4 of their state legislature get elected with just public funding.
Sheesh.
And that is enough to control your destiny. Because those people probably care whether you, the public, are going to give them money to get reelected.
Return on their investment.
But I have a national program which is designed to take advantage of the single vulnerability in the Death Star that's hovering above us.
Yeah.
The Death Star, which says through the Supreme Court that
Citizens United.
citizens, that people are that money is speech, that corporations are people.
Right.
All these nonsensical results, which I don't think that Lewis Carroll could come up with, and he wrote Alice in Wonderland. I mean, we're living through the looking glass in some weird, distorted dimensionality that has no bearing upon what I read in the Constitution.
Right.
Corporations didn't exist when they wrote the
People.
Constitution. I could say these things.
No, I'm with you.
Sometimes it takes.
I mean, when has it worked or benefited or when did it?
Well, it's working great now. I mean, it's working great for the corporations.
Yeah.
they're like the more equal people in our society. They can have religious beliefs and thrust them down your throat if you're an employee of theirs.
Right.
Fancy that. I didn't read that in my civics class. I don't think it's there.
That's amazing, man. Let me ask you just a general question real quick. Because I've actually, we've had one of your opponents here running against, let me see, you got Ted Yoho. We had Miss Yvonne Hayes Henson come through a few months ago. And I haven't had the pleasure to meet Mr. Gosai. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. But I want to ask you, just for the people that are listening and who's familiar with a few of the other candidates, what distinguishes Mr. Tom Wells from the rest of the pack? Like, why should we give you our vote?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I have a plan for how to accomplish things.
Yes, sir.
And it uses the pragmatic politics of this day. And I know the pragmatic politics in this district because I have been outdoors pretty much 7 days a week since June of 2016.
Wow, I saw that you walked the entire District 3, which
I have,
every mile of it. That's a large district there.
I've been out just about every day because Bernie Sanders opened the door. I've been beating my head against that door, having conversations about single-payer health care and corruption in government and all of these things for a long time. My kids got tired of it. Now I share with more folks.
I'm sure they're proud of you, man. Okay, well, you kind of alluded to it a little bit. I want to know if you could talk about your specific vision, your especially.
Well, I hadn't got through with why you should prefer me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go right ahead. I'm sorry. I'm sure you got more to tell about yourself. I'm sorry about that. Go right ahead.
I also have been studying the acts of Congress for about 37 years, and I don't compromise in making sure that we do the right thing. And there's plenty of standards of comparison lying around, like the other countries of the OECD, the developed countries of the world, which are all beating us in healthcare. And if there's a slogan for my campaign, and I'm not much into slogans, it would be one planet, one family.
Nice.
And
that
you can't see part of the world.
That's profound.
And I'm talking about climate change here. Martin Luther King said it thusly, that our technology has outgrown our morality. We have guided missiles and misguided men.
Wow.
And you can't talk Martin Luther King much.
No, that's profound.
And when he died 50 years ago, he stated then that he was so happy, thought himself so fortunate to live in these times when there was no choice but to take positive action or to face non-existence. We had the ability to annihilate ourselves with nuclear weapons, and there was some reason to suspect that might happen. But now we have a much graver threat of climate change, which can annihilate the human population. It doesn't happen immediately, but like a chain reaction in an atomic bomb, once it gets going to a certain point, there's a point where you cannot stop it.
Wow.
And you know that things are going to happen, but it doesn't. But there's no ability to change it. It's not quite like a Will Smith, Bruce Willis movie, but because there is always a giant meteor or the alien invasion, and you know you beat it and it's gone.
Right.
And
this isn't work like that. No, but
no,
climate
this
change.
is a lot heavier lift. This is
Well, let me ask you this: we pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord, I'm sure you know.
Oh yeah.
And which is when I think 96% of scientists agree that.
Well, that's also a lie.
Right.
Because they looked at they did a meta study of the other 3%. It was 97 and 3. Who counts? Yeah. That other 3% consisted of 80 technical papers in refereed journals.
Wow.
Now, the process of refereeing a journal article, with my physics degree, I've published articles and stuff, is you send the paper out to somebody who's supposed to be an expert in the field, and you ask them to evaluate it, and you don't pay them nothing.
That's how it works.
And so sometimes you don't get a legitimate review. Oh, well, that guy's from a decent school. Yep, okay, I want to try and blow back his paper, because then he'll come back and forth and revisions and all this stuff, and it'll take weeks of my time. So, yes, just publish it.
Right.
Well, when they did the meta study of those 80 papers, they found that not a single one had good systematics in their analysis.
Wow.
So it's really 100% of climate scientists conclude that the effects are devastating and man-made. And the other thing about being a scientist is that you understand a little bit about. Scientists are kind of nerdy, unlike myself.
You don't say.
And they are aware of external pressures. So if you're publishing into a climate of denial, then when you're writing your programs and you're putting in the data, you have to make decisions in writing the program that does the analysis. Thousands of decisions. And every time you're thinking about, well, I don't want to be too extreme and ruin the reputation of climate scientists. So they pull back on every little parameter here and there. And the result of that is that every prediction that's been checked ever has been conservative. The very worst thing you read now will not be as bad as reality will be.
I understand.
That's a very good probability statement.
Crazy,
it ain't, nothing's guaranteed.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, that's what I was going to allude to. What am I
going to do about it?
Yeah, exactly. That seems like more of a So what can you do from your position?
Bruce Will Smith kind of thing. Here's the plan, man.
Armageddon.
First of all, we arrive in Washington D.C. with a big blue wave, and it is looking pretty good. Ted Yoho just got endorsed by Donald Trump, I think is his name.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I think it's like
very,
being in the Godfather movie. It's
very surprising.
Kiss of death there. That Trump's endorsees have not been doing that well.
No, they have not.
I have to tell you that one of the things that walking around the district for 2 years shows you you see, if you're listening, if you're talking to people, you see the change. You see the people wanting to defend their vote of Trump, and if you don't mash it down their throat, you can talk to them as honest brokers.
Yeah.
And we all, it's not left and right. Most people figure out that it's really top and bottom.
Oh man.
That the folks who buy in our congressmen, the donor owners of our Congress, are calling the shots, and they're making out like bandits. And we're going to save them too, because they're on the same planet. We can't help saving them if we save our grandchildren.
Wow.
So that big blue wave crashes into the house. You have a moment of revolution. They had a revolution in Tunisia. They had a revolution in Egypt, and they won.
Yeah.
Really quickly.
Through
They
Facebook.
did not have a plan in place to make things happen.
Wow. Yeah, social media played a big part in that as well.
Oh yeah. So what that means is that at that moment, the people in office still, we ain't gonna win every seat because there's not somebody running for every seat.
Right. Some
But
unopposed.
the people who are there will be looking 2 years down the road and thinking, whoa, maybe that corporate money is not the magic charm that it used to be.
History will dictate that.
So what you say is, well, we got a deal for you. We can get you reelected if you pass these two bills. You pass single-payer health care. We'll talk about that in a moment, but it makes everybody's life a lot better in very palpable fashion. And at the same time, we'll pass big funding of public elections. So if people like you, they can reelect you.
I wanted you to kind of break that down for me a little bit.
Wow.
I was going to ask you about that, but since you kind of brought it up already, you just said it about the part about being able to, you can be reelected by public funding for. Break that down for me.
Yeah. Well, that's a very easy one.
Okay.
Now, the thing I started on once before, and I'll see if I get any further this time.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Is the Supreme Court has made corruption legal.
Right.
I mean, anybody can donate any amount of money. We don't even care if it's Russians donating to our candidates because the Congress won't pass a Disclose Act to require groups to
disclose
that stuff.
Right.
And the Supreme Court said they can pass that, but the Congress won't do it because their donors don't want them to. And who owns our Congress? Not us. They're not our Congress.
The lobbyists.
Yeah. So, but the Supreme Court also allows this little bitty thing called public funding with a $1 check offering you a 1040 form, and that can be applied to the presidential third-party candidate. They can come into that election cruising on $10 million.
Wow.
Against $2 billion. So it's a little defect. It's not even big enough to be a joke.
Right.
But like in Star Wars 40 years ago, if we take a money bomb and stuff it in that little defect, we can blow up the Death Star before it kills us all. And what I mean by a money bomb is very specific. I have a very specific program. I can write it down on one page. Why haven't I done that? I've been busy.
But you could if you wanted to. You could.
I'm gonna.
Yes, sir.
And that one-page document is an act which says every voter will get a $100 voucher.
Wow.
And that can be handled through the Supervisor of Elections office or over the internet like a debit card.
Mm-hmm.
But you can only give it to people who are sworn, bound, tied to hands and feet to take nothing else except that $100 voucher. But with 700,000 people in a congressional district, that's $70 million. You can win every district. You can win the presidency. You can win every Senate seat. There would be enough money on the table to win every election.
Wow. So where's this $100 coming from? Like,
Well, we'll get there because
Okay.
that's the standard blowback. That's exactly what Ted Yoho said.
right.
And he was going
Well,
fine with
I never
this.
thought of myself as Ted Yoho before.
No, there's a similarity.
Oh man. Oh, I thought we were friends.
So, no, we'll get to why that's a justifiable
Right. No, I'm sorry.
moment. But the effect is that you'll still have corporate candidates, and the first thing you do to make the publicly funded candidates stand out a little bit is you make in that same law you say, and on the ballot people take public funding and nothing else,
Mm-hmm.
they will be identified, for instance, as Tom Wells, a straight arrow candidate.
Okay.
Now, I think that has enough panache
Yeah, I love it.
to be a winning statement. Now, if you just said a voucher-funded candidate, that just
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
really
yeah.
get to the point.
Yeah.
Okay, now,
What you mean?
now, that $20 billion, that does sound like a decent amount of money, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But right now, the corporations are putting their 10 or 20 billion dollars in these elections, and look at what they're getting. The simplest, cleanest example is Medicare Part D, passed in 2003, and it says to the Medicare administration, it says, "Thou shalt not negotiate drug prices." What? And I did 15 years of government research at Georgia Tech, mostly for the Air Force, stealth technology and all that kind of silliness.
Right. Yeah.
And we negotiated every contract. They did not cut us any slack. Everything the government buys is negotiated. And in fact, the law says that the government is not allowed to pay any more in most cases, almost all cases back till we got this corruption going, than the lowest price you gave to any buyer. So the government would always, by law, require that they get the lowest price that any corporation sells anything for. You want to buy a Ford Ranger, you pay, the government pays the least that anybody pays for Ford Ranger.
Right.
Yeah. And
It's
the idea that you can't negotiate prices, what that means is that when you pass a law that says every school should have an EpiPen for if the children that need that effect, then right after that, the CEO of the company that has a patent for EpiPen raises the price from $7 to $600. Now, curiously, that CEO happens to be the daughter of the Democratic senator from West Virginia.
Wow.
Now, how convenient is that? You wonder why they voted for this, and if they're taking advantage of it a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, they make a few $1 billion off of that. And that EpiPen, that was developed by the NIH on our tax dollars.
Wow.
But the 1981 law under Reagan says that when the NIH develops a patentable piece of stuff, that they have to find somebody to give away the patent.
To give it to.
Yeah, so the corporation that has the patent for the hepatitis C drug that works great, they didn't do the work. We paid for it, and now when we, through Medicare, buy that drug, we pay $96,000 for that course of treatment.
That's a record.
And in India, they say, their Supreme Court in India said, well, that company didn't develop that drug, the government did. We're not going to recognize their patent. We will make it generically, and it costs $800.
What?
$800 for an Indian to cure hepatitis C, $100,000 for us too. And we did the work, we developed the patentable drug, and if this is what you want for your government, just keep on going.
Yeah.
If you think that's not worth $20 billion in an election cycle, just keep on going. But that one law, the Medicare Part D non-negotiation, cost us $100 billion per year. Now, I'm pretty good with the numbers. I'm pretty sure of this, that 4 times 100 is bigger than 20.
I would say so.
Yeah, just possible. So I think we can dispose of that question of how much public funding is worth.
Yeah.
And the same thing in the state of Florida. Governor Scott managed to suppress the Medigap funding $50 billion worth over the last 8 years because that Medigap funding would cut into his business and his small clinics.
Yeah.
Now, if he wants to say I'm perjuring him, libeling him, well, I'm not perjuring myself, and I'm not libeling him, and he can sue me, and I will win.
You'll win every time because that's matter.
I will call a criminal, and we got a lot of
we can look
criminals
that
in
up
D.C.
in
right
no
now.
time to verify that. Well, You just dropped a whole lot of knowledge on me real fast there, Mr. Wells. But what I want to know is you have a particular stance when it comes to justice as well, man.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah,
sorry.
no, you're fine. So I mean, I've seen a couple of things that people may refer to as radical, man. I want to know, just what, especially in our community, man. Where would you begin? I see you got a whole lot on here, man.
Well, now, I was down in Ocala almost 2 years ago talking at a Black Lives Matter rally.
Yes, sir.
And what I said to them is, I'm not changing my opinion. I don't cut any slack to anybody. I think people who run on semi-democratic principles, compromise their principles, are going to lose every time.
Right.
Because you don't fool anybody if you tell different people different things. What I tell people, and this went all the way up to the police endorsement, which I didn't get. But I should have gotten.
Surprising, huh?
Because what I say is that the general principle that we should be thinking of is that no institution should be allowed to or have the moral responsibility to investigate themselves.
Huh.
And right now, I didn't know this till a few months ago, but I knew there had to be something going on. Now I know what it is. The police union helped the Florida legislature come to the conclusion that they should pass a police Bill of Rights. And that Bill of Rights says that will be put, and what I mean by an investigatable incident is when you walk up to a 12-year-old boy with a toy gun and you shoot him 2 seconds after you stop the car.
Yeah, to me, right.
That might upset some people.
Right.
Sure as hell upsets me.
Mm-hmm.
That when that incident occurs, if that were in Florida, because I don't know the law up there like I do the Florida law, that policeman would be put on vacation, full pay and on vacation, while the internal prosecutors would develop the case. And they would develop their full case without ever talking to the police officer. And after they develop the case, they take it to the police officer and his legal team.
Mm-hmm.
And they tell them what they're going to present in court. And the police officer then has the opportunity to make a woven story.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not how you have a trial, you know? And the consequence of that is everybody knows that every policeman is going to get off almost every time. And therefore, if you break ranks from the thin blue line, you will be punished later after the guy is exonerated, after the guilty are exonerated, because we're not talking about a justice system. We're talking about an injustice system.
Absolutely.
How do I fix this?
Yes.
Well, now, this will sound a little funny, but
You knew what I was thinking then, right?
Ted Yoho has made a good start on this. He just got it backwards. They passed the bill H.R. 5698, which says that any crime against the policeman, against the law enforcement officer, Leo, would be investigated as a federal crime. Okay. Well, that doesn't really do any harm that I see. It's a little bit cockeyed. But you reverse it, and it solves the problem. It's as good a solution as I have.
So what's the inverse of that?
You say any time a policeman injures or kills anyone, that is investigated by the FBI.
Wow.
From investigated and as required prosecuted. So the instant your partner shoots the guy who's running away in the back and kills him, you say, "Oh, brother, I'd like to defend you, but if I say anything wrong, I'm going to be held for libel, and I'm going to be up for perjury." Sorry, I'm mixing up libel and perjury. I don't do those very much.
No,
and
I think that's brilliant.
And I talked to policemen at Ocala after that BLM session, and I was afraid they were going to whack me.
Yeah, right.
And they were like, "Yeah, that makes sense."
I was going to say,
because it gives cover for the moral duplicity that is required to be a policeman right now. Nobody goes into the police because they want to shoot people in the back. And when your partner does, you have no choice but to defend him, because he's going to get off and you're going to lose your job if you're if you're telling the truth.
All the blue wall signs.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it a complete solution? I think the complete solution requires also that we have treat policemen as professionals, which means you give them 4 years of police academy.
Right.
And the police academy is about how to respect people. And you deal with guns only the last 6 weeks of police academy. And why do I say that? Because that seems to work in a lot of other countries. The German police force, there was 1 year, it's not real recent, where in the whole country of Germany, about a fourth the size of our population, the police force fired 4 bullets. 4.
I think I heard that, yeah.
And we had a 16-year-old here who was walking around with a toy gun, and the neighbors threatening to kill himself, which is hard to do with a toy gun.
Mm-hmm.
And the police were called. They showed up in droves.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many bullets. It seems like 70 or 80 bullets were fired into that boy. They hit neighboring apartment buildings, and all of it was perfectly okay. And the neighbors were standing off the side yelling, "It's a toy gun."
Right.
Okay, well, maybe you shouldn't put yourself in the line of the fire if you don't think it's a toy gun. Now, I'm going to get a lot of blowback from that. I'm fine with a lot of blowback. I'm not fine with dead people.
Right. Senseless and avoidable. One distinction I'd say between Germany and America is we have a serious, as you know, gun control issue here. I mean, they're everywhere.
Well, I didn't think you'd ever get around to that.
So I mean, where do you start there, Mr. Wells, as our congressman?
No problem.
Yeah.
I'll start exactly where you don't expect. I'm
Okay.
completely down with the Second Amendment.
Okay.
Okay, and what I mean by that means also with the whole Constitution, and that little document says the Supreme Court, not the NRA, decides what the Second Amendment says. There was a case last year, 2017, in Maryland, and the Supreme Court, well, the Appellate Court, Fourth Court of Appeals, ruled in bank because they thought in an important case, 10-4, that it was constitutional. And it was appealed to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, settled law, we don't review settled law. That's an obvious ruling. And that law in Maryland says we ban assault weapons. It gives a pretty comprehensive description of assault weapons and bump stocks and all the other large magazines and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it also says things like, oh, you want to carry a handgun outside your house? Well, you need to show that that your life is under a continuing threat. Every year you have to show that there's a continuing threat to your life, or you can't go outside your house with a handgun. If you're going to have a handgun, you need to be trained how to use it. Now in Florida, for the school guardian program, which I detest, they were saying if a teacher was going to carry a gun, you need to have 132 hours of training. Now, would you want anybody without that amount of training around your child with a gun? Or maybe you think their child is part of your family too. And that's what I mean by one world, one family. That we take care of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's good enough for the school teacher, why is it good enough for the person who wants the gun? If they need that gun to defend themselves, but they don't want to learn how to use it, which is what training's supposed to do, makes no sense to me.
Right. That's...
Background checks and such like are, of course, part of that. And the point is that that's what the Constitution says according to the Supreme Court. Not according to Ted Yoho, and not according to the NRA.
Scott and NRA.
I don't bow down to the NRA.
That's saying a lot. They're the most powerful. They got the most powerful lobbyists.
That's a lobbyist born only of money, not actual people.
Right.
And we're going to break that that chain democracy by public funding of elections. So nobody's going to need an NRA dime to get reelected.
Wow.
They only choose to take that if they want to.
Well, that would change the entire landscape.
That's exactly right. So
Yeah.
all the things which we should have had a long time ago,
Hmm.
given the amount of taxes we all pay, we ain't getting good value for our tax dollar.
Hmm.
The healthcare thing we only touched on briefly, but no other country pays more than $7,500 per year for healthcare on average.
Hmm.
And they have a lot better healthcare results. There are 40 countries with better healthcare results, and the average country with better healthcare results is paying about $5,000. We're paying $10,500. That's $1 trillion a year extra, and about 100 million of us, if we actually have some chronic disease, we'll find out through various tricks that are built into the corporate acts of Congress that we don't actually have the insurance that we thought we had. You can lose your job, and hence your insurance. You can
Yeah.
come back under pre-existing conditions.
Happens all
You
the
can
time.
find exclusions that you didn't read the fine print in your health. You know, one family. If somebody's your family, and they get sick, you say, "Well, gee, you bought the wrong insurance
Yeah.
program.
That's
Just
crazy.
tough luck.
No.
Irresponsible of you."
Hmm.
No, you don't know. That's what they call it. Insurance is
cruel.
supposed to cover what happens to you.
Right. Well, where do you want to start as far as healthcare going? I see
Well,
you with the one, what you said, one family, one planet, and healthcare is a human right. Where do we start there?
Well, we don't have much time.
Nah.
That's what I'm talking about with the climate change, and that's a good thing if we do what we need to do, because it means, like Martin Luther King said 50 years ago, that we have no choice but to take action now.
Yeah.
And what I want to do is pass single-payer health care, start bringing back the bacon to the whole family,
Okay.
and in fact, we bring back the whole damn pig.
Okay. That's HR 676. That's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Okay.
Now that bill, here's a problem. And that bill, I've read it. It's 18 pages long.
Mhm.
Sections of it say the intent of this section is to do so and so.
Right.
The actual health care bill, when it's ready to be voted on, will probably be 2,000 pages long.
What?
Oh yeah. No, you have to define a lot of stuff. You have to define rates of reimbursement and tying it to inflation and exactly what things are cosmetic versus non-cosmetic, and you have to figure out how to get enough dentists to give everybody the dental care, because there are not enough dentists.
Right. That's
Yeah.
I had a hard time finding a dentist.
So the bill naturally is not from corruption, needs to define closely what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure it's done correctly. And what I've been trying to get through to other candidates and to other organizations, the National Nurses Union, the Just Healthcare, the Healthcare Now, all these organizations have been working for many, many years to get this thing passed. And they can't believe anything is just going to break loose like an earthquake and everything change in an instant. But it has to.
Right.
And
Right.
I say it has to again, because if we don't get that protection for our lives, which we've deserved for 50 years without having,
Yes, sir.
that we will not be in a position to do the heavy lifting of transitioning to solar energy and wind, which are the only options consistent with our planet's survival.
Turn everything
And
around.
I say planet's survival, the planet will be fine. We'll be having I've talked to people who say,
like
well,
the dinosaurs, you right?
yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
That's what you mean, man. Well, hey, you refer to yourself a lot as, and I'm just kind of going back. You refer to yourself a lot as straight arrow candidate.
Yeah.
And I just kind of want you to kind of unpack that. And are there any, from the description of what you refer to as a straight arrow candidate, are you the only straight arrow candidate, or are there other
Oh, I don't
Not just in
think-
your race, but I mean, do you see anybody
Oh
that
yeah.
embodies-
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez
Ah,
up in
okay.
Brooklyn.
She did a thing
Yeah,
up there,
I
didn't
met
she?
her a year and a half ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I knew she was going to win.
Really?
I had no doubt.
She shocked the world.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she did.
But there's a bunch of them. Susan
I think that
Smith
guy was-
up in Washington.
Oh, the
James
she beat a-
Thompson, I think, missed slightly. But there's dozens in this state. In this state, have talked to 7 or 8. I'm not going to get all their names now.
Right.
Who on my platform agree that we need to arrive in Washington with bills ready to vote on.
Wow.
HR 676 and a very, very simple single-payer funding bill, which has to be kept simple so there will be no constitutional challenges to it. There are a lot of things we'd like to do. We'd like to stop gerrymandering. We'd like to have ranked choice voting. We'd like to have open primaries. We'd like. Well, let's do the essential first.
Yeah.
And after we get the essential, everything else, all those dominoes will fall because there is no justification for private prisons. There is no justification for for-profit schools.
Right.
There is a justification that's long overdue for a $16 minimum wage.
Okay.
And when we do that $16 minimum wage, we treat everybody fairly. And in fact, well, the business consequences we'll get to in a moment. But what I mean by fairly is if you're making twice that now, you should be making twice that after we raise the minimum wage. And the way to make that happen is to start writing union contracts. The salaries in union contracts as multiples of the minimum wage. That's not my idea. They do that in other countries. Like in Brazil, and my wife is from Brazil, I wouldn't know this. People will say, well, I have a 3.5 job. And they mean that their job pays 3.5 times the minimum wage. Or I have a 5. I have a 2.2 job. And when the minimum wage goes up, they go and say, boss, you owe me a raise. Because this is a 3.5 job.
That's brilliant.
It requires the skills more than what a minimum wage worker has.
You know, I
You're
read-
paying me more because I'm worth more. And you're
Right.
going to keep that up,
And you
dude.
keep up with the economy.
That's right.
You know, I read somewhere that I think it says no state in the whole union can you work a minimum wage job and pay rent or something like that.
No, you can't afford a two-bedroom
A
apartment.
2-bedroom apartment. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No.
So I mean, like, what is going on here? You know.
Well, my minimum wage job back in the late 60s got me a 3 summers and a little bit of $10 gifts from my grandparents for my birthday. All that added up to a Hugger Orange 327 1969 Camaro
Come on, man.
floor.
You see what I'm saying? I don't think you probably wouldn't be able to fill that up with nowadays with that. You know what I mean?
Well,
Would you say
gas
3
was-
summers and?
I was in California and gas got down at one point to 13 cents a gallon.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't even fathom that.
So, no, Tim Canova, one of my real heroes, Alan Grayson, slightly, Andrew Learned, Charlie Richardson, Dana Cottrell, Sanjay
Oh, okay,
Patel,
sure, okay.
Dr. Zimmerman up in the Panhandle. These people are all down with this arrive with single payer and public funding, and we'll get it done
Okay.
this week. 2 years from now, everybody will be so delighted with every congressman who voted for single payer because they will not see anybody being turned away at hospitals. They will not see anybody being bankrupted. 1 million people have medical bankruptcies because the hospitals, 10 of them in this state, charge uninsured people 10 times what they pay the insurance company. And if you don't have any money, they do treat you and the government reimburses them some. But if you have a house, you don't have a house.
Wow.
They take 1 million houses away from
For
people
medical.
in a year. And you know how many medical bankruptcies there are in the in the Western European countries total?
Human. Oh man, get out of here.
It's a round number. There's only one round number. They don't think you should give up your life and your family's life because somebody got sick.
Right.
And that's what family does. If we don't, I mean, I hate to go back. No, I don't actually. I love to go back to Martin Luther King. We will die. We will live together as brothers or die together as fools.
I love that.
My opponent Ted Yoho, and I'm looking ahead a little bit, I confess.
No, we got time for that.
He was calling having a progressive tax.
Mm-hmm.
Last night, I spoke of the fact that something like Social Security is a very regressive tax, and that we should try to make everything a progressive tax because it's simply easier to make more money when you have money. It doesn't take near as much work to make the second $1 million as the first million.
Right.
So why shouldn't we provided the background, the trained workforce, the infrastructure, roads, and internet information that favor your business and the police force to make sure nobody's stealing from you. Why would you not want to pay a little bit of taxes? A little bit more than your secretary.
Right.
Yeah. So he said, well, that progressive tax is straight up Marxism.
You know what's funny about that is, you mentioned Reagan earlier. Reagan was more progressive tax than Obama was, and they still it's like they get you coming and going, you know.
Oh yeah, well both parties, last 10 years, they've been playing like the Republicans are the Harlem Globetrotters, and the Democrats are the Washington Generals.
Okay.
They the paid opposition guaranteed to lose. They never win a game. And now,
Curly with the ball, he's throwing.
right now, they do not want to see progressives win events. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is getting blowback from the Democratic Party.
Oh yeah. She's
And that's crazy.
Uh-huh.
The Democratic Party is trying to seize defeat from the jaws of victory. And it ain't right. And I'm not buying into that. And the Democratic Party, after I win this primary, they're probably going to come to me and say, well, this time we support you. And I say, no.
I don't think so.
Don't need your fossil fuel money because the DNC is now taking fossil fuel money again.
What?
And Democratic PACs that have Democrat Party in their name are taking money from Big Sugar. Big Sugar is the chief source of green slime, one of the big products of South Florida this year.
All right. They got issues right now.
Governor Scott,
Mm-hmm.
Rick Scott, the P is silent. He deregulated, defunded the monitoring of water, so you wouldn't know the level of phosphates and know that it was dangerous, and know that it was going to destroy the East Coast and the West Coast and the Everglades. Yeah, so we got to keep that acreage of sugar up. It is time, in terms of the climate change that has already occurred, that we not grow sugar in this state.
Wow. You
Well, I may be going a little over the edge.
No, you got me there. I didn't. That's something I was definitely all the way unaware of. I gotta be honest.
Well, the phosphate they put on there is beyond what the water can absorb without blooming into green algae. And why exactly are we using phosphates? Because we got to have maximum yield per acre, and we need sugar. Not that much, you know. We would be a little healthier country without that. Now, the sugar problem goes back about 55 years now. There was a Harvard study, a meta-study they call it, where they reviewed all the other studies and synopsized them and came to the conclusion that animal fat is really bad for you, but sugar is just kind of innocuous. Well, that's exactly the opposite of reality.
Yeah.
It took a long time for people to figure that out. And that study from two guys at Harvard, long dead, they got paid $50,000 by the Sugar Institute. And they fudged the results. They threw out results that were contrary to the Sugar Institute's prior knowledge of what the right answer was.
That's the ultimate betrayal to the public.
Well,
right?
you know, this is something I usually get around to in a 5-minute introduction, but when we let companies generally do the scientific research and pay for the results, we ain't getting real science. We're getting junk science. And we
You
have to
broke it
have
down
an
with that.
FDA where we pay for every bit of research, and that opioid crisis would never have transpired. The opioid industry had 2 lobbyists on the FDA board at the time they voted to accept the research done by the opioid industry. 2 lobbyists for that company out of 5 were lobbyists for that company. Does that make sense?
Not
And they
at
said,
all.
yeah, we'll accept that research. That's a non-addictive opioid. Yeah, this is Alice in Wonderland. And they have made $500 billion of that opioid. And how many hundreds of thousands of people have died?
An epidemic right now.
But we can't legalize marijuana because it has enough palliative effects that it would cut into their business. In states that have legalized marijuana, 20% reduction in opioid use.
I bet.
And it will be more than that when they really figure out how to maximize the effectiveness. So, did I mention I'm for a complete legalization?
Yeah, I was just
all
gonna,
records.
I'm so glad you touched on that. I almost skipped over that. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Well, marijuana became illegal back at the end of Prohibition. The guy who was running the federal enforcement action for Prohibition, not a friendly guy. He have you ever heard that moonshine might make you go blind?
I've heard that. Yes, sir.
You know why?
No.
Well, the feds were capturing stills and not destroying the moonshine. They were literally poisoning it.
Wow.
Our federal government was putting poison in the moonshine. If you drank a little, you would go blind, permanently blind.
Can't say.
If you drank more, you'd die.
Can't say that surprises me.
Well, it pretty much infuriates me. But that guy, with the end of Prohibition, saw his fiefdom disappearing. His 15,000 men were going to be unemployed, and he wouldn't have the big office on the corner anymore. So he said, "You got to give me something. So let's trash talk marijuana." And marijuana had been legal, and then it became a Schedule I drug, like the worst drug in the world.
Right.
And it's probably one of the most innocuous plants on earth, most beneficial plants. We don't know because we also outlawed research on it.
Really? No, that I didn't know.
Oh yeah.
I had no clue. I thought.
Oh yeah, we have this absolute addiction to preserving corporate profits. So if people found out that it really wasn't what the evil that people say, and people could just grow their own plants,
cuts in their profit.
Yeah.
I knew that about gun violence. I knew they outlawed research on that. I didn't know that about marijuana. It's crazy.
I've been studying these problems since my children were small because I figured out that the physics and electrical engineering stuff I was doing wasn't going to have much effect on the world.
Yeah.
And the world was going downhill rapidly, and I've been complaining about it a long time. I had my first single-payer healthcare party at my house about 18 years ago.
That's brilliant, man.
Yeah.
And what do you guys do? You guys just hang out and discuss ideas? Or?
Well, I had a doctor from Switzerland.
Nice.
American doctor, but he practiced in Switzerland. And, I've been to clinics here where they have 6 doctors on staff. And the staff will have about 30 people. Okay. You have the appointments clerk, blah, blah, blah. Most of those people are for figuring out which of the 100 insurance plans will cover what code they use, so they're called code matchers.
Okay.
In Switzerland, the guy was like, "No, we had 6 doctors and we had 1 girl at the front answering the phone." So you have a little bit of savings just right there.
Right.
I went to a hospital in Italy. I was lucky enough to be bike touring in 1990 with $100 in my pocket.
Nice.
And a home return flight home. And I had to go to the emergency room, and I'd go in there, and they said, "Okay, just take a seat." Just motioned me. They didn't. They spoke Italian for some reason.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, but they're just gonna wait and let me just disappear. They haven't asked me to fill out a form or anything. And 10 minutes later, A doctor comes in who speaks English. They found a doctor who spoke English. Takes me back, examines me, gives me a prescription, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, doctor, how am I going to pay you?
Right.
And the doctor looks at me, turns his head a little and says, oh, you're American. Canadians would never ask that.
No.
Because he explained to me, we're a hospital. We don't take money.
Diabolical thought there, huh?
Yeah. No, that's what a hospital is.
Right,
That's
I know.
what a family
Right. I'm
does.
just saying, it's just crazy. They have us conditioned to, to the point.
I mean, if I'm a walking biped with slightly humanoid characteristics, they treat you.
Right.
Yeah. Now,
Right.
things vary from time to time, and there's been austerity here and there, and I'm not swearing that's the way it is today.
Mm-hmm.
I should go back and check. I wouldn't mind.
That's funny, man. Well, look, we are running out of time, but I do want to talk about a few things before we get up out of here,
Please.
man. You got your beautiful wife here who's in the studio, who is from Brazil.
Yep.
So I want to hear, so I know this might be kind of a passionate topic here, but what's your whole approach and view on immigration justice? I know they got a lot of crazy things got kids in cages out in Texas right now.
Oh, God.
What's your general position there?
Well, first we begin with an observation that whole thing is just about corporate profits. And ICE should be abolished. It was set up under the AUMF, the authorization for the use of military force back in 2002 or 3 under Bush that was used to justify going to war with Iraq, which had no Al-Qaeda at all,
Right.
because Saddam Hussein was a bitter enemy of Osama bin Laden.
Right.
Yeah, but they had oil.
Right.
Oil is a dangerous thing to have.
Mm.
So ICE from the get-go has been about using private detention facilities. And there's money to be made there. When they take somebody, an adult, and put them in private detention, they get about something over $100 a day. When they take a child away from its mother, they get about $800 a day for keeping that child in a cage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's $250,000 a year. That's a lot better than slavery ever paid.
$250,000 per child.
Per child.
Get out of here, man.
Oh yeah. They are talking about special appropriations of $7 or $8 billion to cover these grotesque charges. And 6 or 8 months before that thing started, they were putting something like an ankle bracelet on each member of the family and saying, "Now y'all are going to show up for the trial, because we'll come and get you if you don't." And that program costs about $10 per day. But that doesn't pay enough to the corporate owners of our Congress. So they shut down that program, which was giving about 95% people showing up for trials on time. And they decided they would break up families, not even keep a record of what child came from a family, start bad-mouthing people, saying that's not really their child. They're trafficking that child. They're stealing that child.
I've seen that too.
And this is just...
Yeah, slavery.
There's a word for it, but maybe it's not the right word.
Right. I think you've used up your allotment of 4-letter words today. But yeah, but it's fine. Let's talk about, like I said, I got about 2 minutes left, man. But I want you to touch on real quick as much as you can.
I didn't answer the question.
Okay.
Ted Yoho says we have to enforce our laws. Well,
No.
Ted, you don't go to Congress to enforce laws. You go to write laws. And when the law is given a bad result, you write a better law.
There you go.
That's what you do.
Right.
And
Law enforcement is for officers.
Yeah, and we need a law that says that the 10 million people who are living like citizens in this country in the terms of educating their school, being honest, paying their taxes, getting a driver's license, doing a good job, getting underpaid for it, that they should have a short, clear path to citizenship. They are Americans. They are doing this stuff. Now, yeah, they didn't get a ticket when they came in to say you're legal here, but I don't think anybody in my family ever got one of them tickets either.
No. They won't.
No.
That's crazy, man. All right, like I said, man, I just wanted real quick if you could touch on you got some pretty good ideas for paid family sick time and leave and all that too. You talk about that a little bit before we get up
Well,
out of here.
every other country has sick time and paid leave and all that stuff, and that really should go into every job.
Right.
You shouldn't get a cut
Yeah.
for working people part time. With the introduction of single payer health care, so that your health care is not tied to your work, there will no longer be an incentive to have people work 30 hours a week at Papa John's.
Mm-hmm.
It's much more efficient to have people work 40 hours a week because they can make a living. They don't have to have a second job. You can schedule them appropriately. You don't have to retrain and rehire because of the turnover when you're working people 20 or 30 hours a week. They can't afford to work for you.
Right.
And
right.
when you're paying them a living wage, the same people will be better employees because they will have less stress in their lives. They won't have their baby in ghetto child care. We'll have real child care.
Right.
At that $1 trillion, mental health is supposed to be covered by health care under single payer. Well, part of mental health is not just treating mental disease, but preserving mental health. You preserve mental health by giving people enough to live on to begin with,
Wow.
and reducing the stress of low wages and inadequate child care, and the knowledge that you won't be able to afford to go to college even if you do well in school. All those stresses are contributing to
Yeah.
mental illness and to subjugation of the American democracy. It's not as powerful when people do not all have the chance to reach that which our Constitution promises, that we are all created equal.
Yeah, you say Dr. King thought, what is it? Injustice anywhere, threat to justice everywhere.
Oh, absolutely.
I love it. Oh, well, real quick, before we get up out of here, let me see. We definitely want to shout out Election Day.
August 28th, there's early voting starting Saturday, I believe, the 18th.
Okay.
The next day is my birthday, so that's a good day to
Oh,
vote.
man. What was you about, 30th birthday, 35th?
And
I like that, didn't
less than 27.
Okay, and then for people to reach you, man, what was
TomWellsForCongress.com.
Awesome.
The website's getting better and better. We will be hitting your phones and your emails as hard as we can, but the message is that we can take care of each other like one family.
I love that.
We have a highly technical, super technical campaign, which when you do things yourself, you write your own software and get your own servers and PBX system and all that.
Yes, sir.
You can do it at 1% of what other people are paying. So my campaign looks like I'm really underfunded.
Right.
Ted needs to march out.
Right, but you more you more resourceful. Sounds like.
Well,
So-
it comes with being a nerd.
Hey, ain't nothing wrong with that, man. You looking at a nerd. Well, hey, man, I just want to thank you again. Good luck in the racing. I really think you're shaking some things up, man, and I'm really looking forward to.
If you don't vote, you don't get to complain.
Say that again. That's why we definitely want
Yes.
to shout out ways to vote. August 28th, early voting starts the week before.
Yep, like the 18th.
Awesome.
You got to do it by the 28th.
I think early voting is the best way to go. That way you can go home, you can research a
Oh,
little
yeah.
bit. You can, I think that's just the best way.
Oh yeah, the November ballot is going to be really complicated. There's some good amendments on there. The best one is the remission of sins, by which I mean restoration of felon voting rights, felon civil rights,
Right.
which 47 other states do, but Florida's got to be trailing.
In the dark ages.
Yeah.
Well, they say I've read that ballot's going to be the longest in 20 years. if I'm not
Yeah, you
mistaken.
gotta
Yeah.
go and do the early vote and get an image of the ballot. Talk to some people. There are things like League of Women Voters and a couple of the organizations which offer their recommendations and their arguments. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, man, thanks again for all that you've done for up until this point and what you could possibly and will do.
Well, I get that a lot. People thanking me for what I've done, but I couldn't do anything else. I got grandchildren, about 8 billion of them, and I do not want to not be able to look them in the face.
Right.
Say things are falling apart because we failed to
Right.
take any action
Wow.
when we knew what needed to be done. Science counts.
Yeah.
You can't bury your head in the sand. You're going to drown
Yeah.
here in Florida. The water's rising.
The
dudes.
water.
Yeah.
Good point, man. Spoken like a true scientist there. But hey, thanks again, man. I just want to thank you for coming by. Thank you for all you doing. Good luck in the race.
Really appreciate it.
Tom Wells, U.S. Congress District 3 candidate, man. Make sure y'all go out and vote August 28th. Excuse me, I'm messing up. August 29th, your birthday. Hey, don't go anywhere. Y'all keep it locked right here. WNBT 90.1 FM The Beat. It's your boy, Jerk Jenkins. Mr. Wells. We got to have you come back, man. Oh, no.
Why should the people open their eyes
Oh, yeah. Oh, and let me turn this on.
and vote in the